Hey, what's everybody seeing here with the common sense perspective? Alright, my agenda is just to bring back common sense because there's just a lot of stupid shit going on out there right now. And, sometimes views can be skewed, and I'm just trying to rein it all back in and bring you guys a common sense to everything. So, without further ado, let's just get into it, alright? So, the common sense perspective. And what's going on today, or I guess yesterday, from what I saw. Let's get to it, right? So Trump, is going around making the rounds. He was in Nevada to speak, and then also stopped in California. All right, so there he goes. He slams Kamala Harris in California, talks about illegal immigrants and what else? And crime, which is a problem in California, right? Borders wide open in California. And why is it wide open in California? Because Gavin Newsom's the governor and he allows it to be open. He gives them free health insurance, free money, free everything that you need because it's a sanctuary state. And so when you have nut jobs like Newsom and Harris, who are San Francisco based people, that's where they originally came from. Well, you're going to have these San Francisco based ideas of progressivism, if that's such a word, and liberalism, if that's such a word as well. I think liberalism, I don't know about progressivism, but progressive ideas, right? And stupid shit that, well, things like illegal immigration and sanctuary status comes into play. And if you talk negative about it, then you're racist, right? How about we pay money for our regular services, and we can't even get regular services because they're being catered towards illegal people that shouldn't even be here in the first place, right? And then you wonder why we're in a multi-billion-dollar deficit, right, in California. I think it was like what 50, 60, 70 billion, whatever it is. 20 and the thing about this, 24 billion was spent on trying to solve the homeless problem that was never solved because it got worse over time. And they didn't even account where all the money went. They don't even know what the money was used for. They don't know where it all went. And then the homeless problem went up, right? Higher. And so, how can you spend $24 billion on homeless and the problem still continues to go up? And not only that, earlier this year, Newsom put a bond measure to, again, help for the homeless, right? And because if he actually blatantly put it out there as like a tax to help pay for homeless or any sort of form but a bond, it would have been a flat out rejected no. But because it was a bonds, right? Bonds is a friendlier term. It barely passed, right? Like barely. It was like a 51% passing over 49% of not passing. That's how close of a margin it was of passing. And again, you get bonds now that the next generation is responsible to pay for something that will probably won't be solved and still continue to be a problem. But Gavin got it his way once again because you guys are a bunch of morons. California got a bunch of morons. They can't really think. All they can think about is because they're just trying to stay in the party line, but they're not really thinking about policies and your everyday life. You wonder why things are so expensive. You wonder why things are constantly a problem. And you can't figure out the root of the problem is in the government and how they go about spending, how they go about allocating, funds into certain things, and then you wonder why we have problems, right? Well, there you go. So another problem that we have in California is this back and forth water supply, water shortage, all this stuff, right? And the claim is that, let me bump over to this. All right, as part of Trump's stop in California, let me get out of these. Let me get out of that. Where is it at? Man, I was just looking at it here. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, there we go. There we go. Found it now. So, as he was in California, he stopped and, he talked about the problem with California and its wildfires, right? And he says that he'll withhold federal aid for California wildfires if he's elected. And he insults Newsom. Yeah, because Newsom's terrible in running the government, right? Like I said, multi-billion-dollar deficit. And, it's just funny how, all these decisions that are being made has been terrible decisions, right? And why do we have wildfire problems? Because numerous things, right? We have overgrowth. All right, overgrowth of the natural scenes that we have in California, right? All the trees and all the scenes that we have that's of agricultural life, right? And so within this environment that we have in California, they don't allow cutting back. They don't allow controlled burns, right? They don't allow all these things because it could be too, dangerous to do all that stuff, right? And it's a waste to our valuable environment, right? Oh man, it can endanger, species, and it can do this, it can do that, right? There's a lot of environmental red tape, and then you wonder why we can't cut back on some of the brush, clean up brush, we control burns, all that stuff, and in an effort to prevent wildfires from happening. And that's all responsible by Gavin Newsom and the environmentalists that he bends the knee to, right? With the Green New Deal and all this stuff. Oh no, you can't do any of this stuff, because it's environmentally friendly to keep things the way they are. Okay, then again, you wonder why we have wildfires. So, with that, I think it's a good idea to kind of hold his feet to the fire and say, hey, these wildfires keep happening because you're not allowing the state to just do what it needs to do to prevent these wildfires, right? And then everything trickles down to everything else, right? The wildfires that happens, what happens? Insurance goes up. PG&E is partly responsible because they're part of what they're supposed to do is to make sure the infrastructure of electricity is running fine, and they go through a lot of areas that do need to be cut back, and kind of trimmed back and all that stuff, just so wildfires wouldn't be happening. That's part of PG&E's deal there too, right? Is to make sure that they stay on top of that stuff, but their hands are tied as well. Well, partly is greed, and then the other part is because environmentalists and all that, right? And that's the problem. We got too many of these little pissant organizations like environmentalists and all these different advocate groups and stuff. And Gavin bends the knees to all of them. California bends the knees to all of them, essentially. And so that's why we have continuous problems with everything, because you bend the knees to everybody. And rather than you try to do what's best for the state, you do what's best for the advocates, right? And the crybabies and all that. And rather than trying to appease California, the citizens, right? the everyday people that pay the taxes that has to deal with this stuff. And so when these things happen, everything else goes up. Electricity rates go up, insurance goes up, everything else goes up, right? And also part of the wildfire problem is um, restriction of water as well, because that partly plays a role in why we have more, at the same time, drier areas, because you're not allowing the water to do its thing. All right. I think they say like agriculture is about 80% of what California uses in terms of water, right? But they also restrict agriculture from using water because they say, oh, it's because they're trying to protect the Delta smelt, right? These little tiny fish, which is a joke. Um, what's more important, is little tiny fish or people's lives in California, right? The people that produce food, right? Agriculture's food, whether it's nuts or veggies or whatever it is that you produce as a farmer, right? You produce these things. It's a livelihood to be a farmer, but if you restrict their livelihood, how they going to produce products, or I guess food, and how are they going to produce income for their own personal livelihood if you restrict water and being able to do what they are supposed to do, is provide these things for the people of California, right? But no, you want to protect these tiny little fish that don't even have a long life in the first place, right? I think they say Delta smelts only have like a life that lasts, I think, just a few months or something like that, if I read correctly. Um, and when you see that, it's like, wow, you're protecting fish that has a short lifespan. I mean, again, what's more important, right? Are you trying to protect the environment in terms of wildfires? Because you're really not. You're protecting the little tiny fish, all right? Because you have advocates that say, oh, we got to protect this fish, or we got to protect this fog, all that, right? They say they haven't built a reservoir since the 70s in California, right? And so, with all these water restrictions, look what happened with the water of the last couple of years, because we've had like, a great amount of rainfall these last couple of years. It goes straight out to the sea because they didn't allow the water to be stored, nor did they have any other reservoirs built to be able to store these waters, which we should have, just in case. You never know what you need it for. Plus, all that water that ran off into the ocean could have easily went to the farmers to allow them to do what they need to do. But no, when you impose restrictions and policy and regulations that really screw people over, and screw California over, like they've been continuing to do these last few years with, the rollback and punishing for crime, by catch and release, or, oh, we'll let prisoners out early because we're trying to do prison reform, or, you know, oh, we raised lower limits of what it is to be a felony when it comes to robbery and stealing, and that's why stealing is way up, right? And crime is way up. Then you wonder why cost of living is way up, because that's a byproduct of the environment, right? If there's a lot more theft and all that stuff that's going on, and crime is up, I mean, it's a trickle down effect. Prices go up because the cost of goods from not being paid for but stolen, right? It really kills the business. They have to raise the price to make up for the lost purchases, right? And then the trickle down effects continues, right? So cost of that goes up. Cost of living altogether goes up because now you could consider that as part of the equation of the inflation with all the handouts that they give and the continuous printing of money and California's continuous spending of money they don't have. Hey, let's just pay the student loans and you know we'll forgive it because the government will take care of it, right? All these things makes it life a lot harder to live, especially in California. So I think what Trump was saying there, some people was crying, "Oh, this extortion, holding back federal aid," and it's like, no, how about you know, really looking at the policy of the water and the usage of it and allowing it to be used the way it's supposed to be used, along with allowing California to do what they need to do to help, like fix issues like the wildfire problem that we continuously have in California. Let people do their jobs, cut back brush, control burns, all these things that could quell these issues. And then we wouldn't have problems with wildfires and the amount of insurance that's allocated to pay for wildfires and why the rates continue to go up and all that stuff. And everything has a trickle down effect. And that's just the problem. It just sucks, and disappointing to see that. And so, and they only do this in the name of protecting, whether it's wildlife or plants or species of such as this smelt and things like that. When things like this can easily be solved, right? And when you do all that, man, what a difference it can make in California alone. And so something to think about. All right, and hopefully things will change as we need some change here, and it starts at the very, very top, right? We need a new president to run the country, and then that way, as everybody says in California, well, outside of the blue cities, we do call him Gavin Newscum, right? Um, and that's true because he is new scum. He is a scum. They call him a hair gel boy and all this other stuff because all Gavin needs to do is just stop with this progressiveness. But he's not going to do that. You gotta get someone else in place to be able to really make some change. All right. So with all that, something to think about. Common sense says, hey, if you build reservoirs, if you give the water to the farmers to use what they need, rather just because if you're letting it run off into the ocean, that's a big problem. That's already, why you just letting water go to waste like that, right? When it can easily be used for the farmers, right? When you allow usage in the overall environment, all right, to be able to, things wouldn't dry up and become brush because it would be nicely watered down and taken care of, right? Kept green. But no, things get dry, and what happens when it gets dry? It becomes fuel for fire. So, again, something to think about, alright? Yeah, smelt. Okay. So, if things happen, things happen. I mean, like I said, what's more important, these little tiny fish or people? Well, again, something to think about. Alright, enough of me. Something I wanted to just bring about here when I saw this, I was like, yeah, you know what? Nothing's going to change unless we need, and it starts at the top with the president. All right. So with that, comment down below. Let me know what you think. Subscribe, hit the bell icon, and keep you up to date on stuff to talk about. I talk about stuff every day, and just want to say thank you, and again, let me know what you think. I'll see you next one.